The Backrooms was never architecture. It's a map of what happens inside a mind when perception breaks, memory erodes, and identity dissolves into pure habit. What's actually trapped down there isn't people, it's a pattern. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why the Backrooms never really let anyone out. This is occult cinema, where the screen is the sigil. Embodied Samskaras. The wandering figures scattered throughout the Backrooms are the clearest image in the entire film of what it's really trying to say. They aren't simply monsters or survivors who lost their way. They are embodied samskaras, living habits, memories, and conditioned patterns that have become so deeply ingrained they continue moving long after conscious awareness has vanished. They don't truly interact with the world around them. They repeat, they pace, they perform the same gestures, follow the same invisible routines, and respond to the same unseen impulses as if caught in grooves carved so deeply they can no longer step outside them. They are consciousness reduced to momentum. Not alive in the fullest sense, but animated by repetition alone. In Buddhist philosophy, a samskara is a mental impression or conditioning formed through repeated thoughts, emotions, and actions. Every experience leaves a trace upon the mind, and every repeated reaction deepens that trace. Over time, these impressions become habits. Habits become character, and character begins operating automatically. Eventually, we stop making choices altogether. We simply become the accumulated momentum of everything we've repeatedly done, feared, desired, and believed. The Backrooms externalize this invisible psychological process. What we see wandering its endless halls are not merely people, they are conditioning made visible. They are the resentment replayed until it becomes an identity. The fear rehearsed until it defines every decision. The routine repeated until life itself becomes mechanical. They have forgotten that these patterns were ever choices because repetition has transformed them into reality. This is why the film's creatures are so unsettling. They aren't grotesque because of how they look. They're grotesque because they represent a possibility within all of us. Every unconscious habit, every unquestioned belief, every emotional loop has the potential to become another hallway in our own internal backrooms. We tell ourselves we are making decisions, yet much of the time, we are simply replaying old programs written by memory, trauma, culture, and experience. Seen through this lens, the Backrooms become a map of the conditioned mind. The deeper one travels, the further one moves from direct experience, and the closer one comes to pure repetition, a reality made of copies, where every cycle strips away another layer of awareness. The wandering figures are what remains when that process reaches its conclusion. The person is gone. Only the pattern survives. The real horror of the Backrooms, then, isn't that they're endless. It's that they ask a terrifying question. How much of your life is truly being lived by you? And how much is simply the momentum of patterns you've repeated for so long that you've mistaken them for yourself? The no clip. Clark finds a doorway in the wall of his warehouse, and he can't stop himself from going through it. That single decision is the whole film in miniature. He doesn't fall into the Backrooms by accident. He walks toward it, curious, restless, already dissatisfied with the life he's standing in. The no clip isn't a glitch in reality. It's what happens the moment perception stops being trustworthy enough to hold someone in place. In gaming, a no-clip is a cheat or debug command that allows a player to pass through solid objects, ignoring the normal rules of the game world. The Backrooms mythos adopts this concept as its central premise. Someone accidentally no-clips out of ordinary reality and falls into a hidden layer of existence that exists behind the world we know. Symbolically, no-clipping represents a rupture in perception, a moment when the familiar structures of reality fail, exposing what normally remains unseen. It is less about physically walking through a wall than slipping between levels of consciousness. Within Backrooms, no-clipping serves as a metaphor for liminal states, trauma, and altered awareness. Characters don't simply enter another location. They cross a threshold where memory, identity, and perception begin to unravel. From an occult perspective, this mirrors ancient ideas of initiation, where an individual passes beyond the veil, separating the material world from hidden realities. Unlike traditional mystical journeys, however, the characters do not cross the threshold intentionally or with preparation. They stumble into the unknown uninitiated, making the experience terrifying rather than enlightening. In this sense, the Backrooms suggest that beneath the ordered world lies an unseen psychic landscape, and no-clipping is the moment the illusion of ordinary reality breaks, revealing the strange architecture of the unconscious that has always existed just beyond perception. Gnostic cosmology describes something almost identical. The soul falls out of the pleroma, the realm of true fullness, into matter, a lower world built from imitation and distortion. The fall isn't punishment, it's forgetting. Once the soul stops perceiving its true origin clearly, it drifts, and the drifting becomes a trap of its own making. Buddhist philosophy names this same starting point avidya, root ignorance, the first link in the entire chain of suffering. Every subsequent problem, craving, aversion, attachment, the whole architecture of a trapped mind begins with this one crack. Perception slips first. Everything after is just consequence. Clark doesn't fall into the backrooms. He walks in because something in him was already loose enough to let him. The copy of a copy. The deeper into the backrooms you go, the stranger everything becomes. The more existence decays into copies of copies, where every repetition introduces another flaw, another omission, until reality itself begins to forget what it once was. Same yellow, same stains, same drop ceiling, but degraded, smeared, a photocopy of a photocopy, run through the machine one too many times. This is memory shown to you visually. Not memory as a photo album, memory as a signal losing resolution the further it drifts from the original event. And the film doesn't just show you this decay, it puts you inside it. The footage is grainy, unstable, first person, the kind of camera language usually filed under found footage horror. But look at what it's actually doing. It never lets you get your bearings. Every time you think you've located yourself in a hallway, the hallway has already shifted. That's not a stylistic flourish. That's the film making the viewer feel exactly what unreliable perception feels like from the inside. It plays like a dream you can't wake up from. Not a nightmare with monsters chasing you, worse than that, the specific dream where you keep trying to open your eyes and the room just keeps rearranging itself instead. The Hermetic tradition has a phrase for exactly this kind of correspondence. As within, so without. The outer world reflects the inner state of the one experiencing it. The backrooms don't need monsters to be horrifying. The environment itself is doing the work, showing you a mind that's lost its fixed points and doesn't know it yet. Clark, the failed architect. Before Clark ever finds the slit in the wall, he's already lost. Divorced, drinking, running a furniture store he resents, under a mascot costume he hates, after a career as an architect that never happened the way he wanted. Clark doesn't blame himself for any of it. He blames his ex-wife, his failed ambitions, the world for not recognizing what he thinks he deserved. That refusal to look inward is the crack that opens everything else. In Jungian terms, whatever a person refuses to face doesn't disappear, it goes underground and keeps operating from there, usually louder than it would have if it had just been faced directly. Clark's resentment doesn't go away because he ignores it. It waits. The backrooms don't create Clark's problem. They amplify what was already there and give it room to grow without anyone stopping it. Pirate Clark. Somewhere in the depths of the backrooms, Clark stops being the one in control. Pirate Clark takes over, a grotesque, oversized version of the mascot costume Clark has always hated, now walking around with a mind and a hunger of its own. This is the Jungian shadow given a body. Not a demon that possessed him, not a separate evil, just everything Clark buried. His rage, his resentment, his refusal to change, finally given enough unconscious space to fully take the wheel. Jung was explicit about this. The shadow doesn't go away because you ignore it. It grows in the dark precisely because nobody is looking at it, and eventually it gets strong enough to run the whole show. Pirate Clark is what happens when a man spends years refusing to look at what he actually is. By the time Mary meets him, there's no longer a version of Clark left to negotiate with. Behavior has fully replaced identity. The pattern has become the person. Mary Klein in the window. Mary tells every patient the same thing. Open the window. Let the light in. Stop sealing yourself off. She's never done it herself. Her mother was agoraphobic, paranoid, spent years barricading every window and door in the house Mary grew up in. Mary built an entire career treating the exact wound she's never actually healed in herself. That makes her Chiron, the wounded healer from Greek myth, the figure who has the power to treat others precisely because he carries a wound of his own that never closes. Chiron never heals himself. That's the tragedy built into the archetype. He heals everyone else while his own wound stays permanently open. Mary's descent into the backrooms to save Clark isn't just a rescue mission. It's Mary finally walking directly into the exact thing she's spent her whole career telling other people to face, the sealed window she's never once opened for herself. Async. Async found the backrooms decades ago. They didn't warn anyone, they built a business. Storage, real estate, quiet disappearances treated as acceptable overhead. Gnostic cosmology has a name for exactly this kind of structure. The archons, the ruling forces of the material world who benefit from souls staying disoriented, distracted, and unaware of what's actually happening to them. The archons don't need to trap anyone directly, they just need people to stay confused long enough to keep the system running. Async represents more than just the corporation investigating the backrooms. It symbolizes humanity's attempt to understand the deepest mysteries of existence through analysis, control, and technology alone. The name itself, meaning asynchronous or out of sync, reflects a consciousness that has fallen out of harmony with reality, while the Backrooms behave like a living unconscious, responding to memory, perception, trauma, and emotion. Async approaches them with cameras, hazmat suits, experiments, and endless data collection. Rather than allowing themselves to be transformed by the unknown, they try to reduce it to something measurable, embodying the modern impulse to conquer mystery instead of participating in it. From an occult perspective, async echoes myths like the Tower of Babel or Prometheus, humanity reaching beyond its limits in pursuit of forbidden knowledge. Their sterile laboratories and protective suits symbolize a refusal to engage the mystery directly, as though enlightenment can be achieved without personal transformation. Yet the film ultimately suggests the opposite. The Backrooms cannot be mastered because they are not simply a place but a reflection of consciousness itself. By the ending, the line between Async's interrogation rooms and the Backrooms has nearly disappeared, implying that the system trying to control the mystery has itself become part of it. Async represents the ego's futile attempt to dominate the unconscious, while the Backrooms remind us that true understanding comes not through control, but through transformation. Bobby and Kat. Bobby and Kat don't die because the Backrooms attack them. They die because at some point, each of them stops treating the space as something to escape and starts treating it as something to accept. That shift, from resistance to surrender, is the exact line this film draws between staying alive and becoming another still life. Mary never fully crosses that line. She keeps questioning the space right up until the end, even when it would be easier not to. Bobby and Kat stop questioning first, and that's the moment the loop actually gets them. The mural. At some point, Clark paints his entire descent onto a wall, image by image, the closest thing the film gives us to a confession. He can no longer say what's happened to him out loud, so he paints it instead. This is exactly what the shadow looks like the moment it starts becoming conscious. An unconscious pattern finally given form, finally visible, finally named, even if only in pictures. But naming a pattern and breaking it aren't the same thing. Clark paints his own descent in full detail and still doesn't turn back. The mural proves he sees it. It doesn't prove he's free of it. The loop that might not break. Mary makes it out. The whole descent has played like a dream you can't wake up from. Unstable footage, a space that keeps rearranging itself the moment you try to fix your location inside it. So when Mary finally emerges, it feels like the dreamer's eyes finally opening. Except she doesn't wake up into safety. She wakes up into Async's custody, the very system that profited from the loop the entire time. And then the film shows you something else, a distorted, glitching copy of Mary, already existing somewhere back in the Backrooms. This is where everything this video has been building toward finally lands. Perception broke first. Memory eroded next. Identity dissolved into pure repetition after that. Mary is the one character who fights that sequence the whole way through. She keeps questioning, keeps holding on to who she is, even as the space tries to copy her into something frozen and empty, like the still lifes around her. And she still doesn't get a clean escape. A version of her stays behind. True escape was never about finding a physical exit. It's about awakening to the pattern itself, recognizing the loop clearly enough to stop feeding it. Mary found the door. But finding the door and fully severing the pattern aren't the same thing, and the glitching copy left behind is the film asking whether anyone ever fully leaves a loop like this, or whether some part of you always stays behind in it, still repeating the motion, long after the rest of you has walked out. Every tradition in this video points to the same three-part collapse. Perception breaks first. Memory erodes because of it. Identity dissolves into pure habit once there's nothing stable left to hold it together. The Backrooms was never really about a building. It was asking whether you'd recognize your own loop if you were standing inside it right now. This has been Occult Cinema, where the screen is the sigil.